In an industry full of innovation, every year new roller coasters are constructed at parks around the world. Some of these rides will have wide-ranging impacts, influencing the attractions of the future. Discover the story of roller coasters that made history. Premiering at Disneyland in 1959, Matterhorn Bobsleds took park guests on an alpine adventure around the rocky peaks of the famous mountain. The Matterhorn became Disneyland's first true thrill ride, the snowy bobsled run made possible with the revolutionary tubular steel track design. Welcoming the first guests in 1955, Disneyland had seen constant expansion, with new attractions coming online every year. Upon opening, a small hill was located in an area between Fantasyland and Tomorrowland, created during the excavation of Sleeping Beauty Castle's moat. When the Skyway arrived in 1956, one of its support towers was located on the hill. Looking for new attraction ideas, Walt Disney suggested a toboggan run on this hill, using real snow. Logistics for this proved impractical, but the idea remained. A roller coaster could be used to provide the thrills similar to a bobsleigh run, with a giant foam mountain creating the alpine theme and hiding the unsightly Skyway tower. Disney designers collaborated with manufacturers Arrow Development to design a layout that saw two separate runs intertwine. Arrow's revolutionary track design allowed for twists and turns never before seen on a roller coaster. The tubular pipe track allowed coaster wheels to connect at 3 points, creating a smooth ride that could deliver tight cornering and sudden dips, emulating the feel of a real bobsled. Opening alongside the new monorail and submarine voyage, Matterhorn Bobsleds would be part of a significant expansion of the park's Tomorrowland area. Original trains held 4 passengers in line, and guests would be loaded at one of the 2 Swiss-themed outdoor stations near the base of the mountain. The 2 tracks of the Matterhorn Bobsleds featured separate parallel lift hills, and trains would progress upwards entering the interior of the mountain. Cresting the hill, tracks would take different paths, intertwined with each other. Upon opening, the inside of the mountain was hollow, and cars would weave in and out of the supports and openings in the structure. Near the end, trains would dip downwards into an alpine pool, creating a cooling splashdown. Changes would be made to the Matterhorn in subsequent years. Trains were joined in pairs, increasing capacity, and the empty interior filled with the icy caverns we know today. In 1994, the Skyway closed, its large openings filled in, enhancing the forced perspective of the mountain. The Matterhorn Bobsleds has become a Disneyland classic, remaining popular to this day and paving the way for future Disney thrill rides. Its legacy, however, is even more wide-reaching. Tubular steel track has become the standard rails used on most modern roller coasters. The innovation pioneered by Arrow paved the way for the complex ride designs we see today. Kings Island opened in 1972 as a replacement for the older Coney Island. The standout attraction at the theme park would be the Racer, a new wooden roller coaster featuring 2 side-by-side tracks. During the decade prior, the demand for new roller coaster designs had been in decline, so much so that designer John C. Allen had decided to enter retirement in 1969. Looking for a headline attraction at the planned Kings Island, Allen was convinced out of retirement to design a roller coaster for the new park. Construction began in 1970, with the ride opening on April 28, 1972. Located in the Coney Mall Park section, the photogenic white wooden ride provided a backdrop to the main midway. Trains would be synchronised and would race each other, travelling side by side for most of the ride. Tracks split before the turnaround section, ensuring trains travelled an equal distance and providing a true racing design. Riders choose their side and are secured with lap bars. Following a synchronised dispatch, trains enter a turnaround before arriving at the lift hills. After cresting the 88-foot peak, trains race down matching 88-foot drops. The pair race over airtime hills before tracks split, negotiating another airtime hill and rising into the turnaround. Completing a loop, riders drop again and race back towards the station, tracks recombining and trains passing over smaller hills on the return journey. The Racer appeared on national television the year after its opening, when it was ridden in an episode of The Brady Bunch. It was modified in 1982 to allow one of its trains to run backwards, a feature that lasted until 2008. The racer is credited with igniting the public's interest in roller coasters, following a period of decline. Its popularity leading to the construction of many new rides during the decade, and ushering in a new era dubbed the second golden age of the roller coaster. Knott's Berry Farm has a long history, starting as a roadside berry stand in the 1920s and growing to become the modern theme park we know today. In 1975, the park constructed its first roller coaster and installed the now famous Corkscrew. Corkscrew became the first modern inverting roller coaster, turning riders upside down twice during its circuit. Looping coasters had existed around the turn of the 19th century, but were dangerous and uncomfortable, with interest in looping coasters fading. The introduction of tubular steel track provided opportunities for more complex layouts. Eager to capitalise on this, in 1970, Arrow Development founder asked engineer Ron Toomer to design a roller coaster that would turn riders upside down. Bending wire around a pipe to demonstrate the principle, Toomer developed the corkscrew element. After 4 years of development, a prototype corkscrew roller coaster was constructed at the Arrow factory in California. The 1,250-foot layout would feature 2 back-to-back corkscrew elements. The prototype was a success, and that ride was moved to Buena Park to open as Corkscrew in 1975. Corkscrew was installed in the Roaring Twenties Park section and featured a blue and white colour scheme. Riders were secured in trains with over-the-shoulder restraints, another first in the industry. Leaving the station, trains dipped slightly and completed a turnaround to enter the 70-foot lift hill. At the top, trains completed another 180-degree turnaround and entered the first drop. Riders reached 46 miles per hour before pulling up slightly and entering a bank curve. The double corkscrew would come into view, and trains completed the inversions, somersaulting riders twice. Another turnaround followed and trains returned to the station. Corkscrew was removed from Knott's Berry Farm in 1989, reopening at Silverwood the following year with a new colour scheme. The space at Knott's would be filled by Boomerang and eventually Hang Time. The double inversions on Corkscrew paved the way for more modern inverting roller coasters. Since its opening, many inverting coasters have been constructed and opened. From simple shuttle loops to multi-inverting custom models, each one owing its success to the earlier Corkscrew. Cedar Point in Sandusky, Ohio, had long had the reputation for installing the latest thrills and record-breaking rides. For the 1989 season, the park would introduce Magnum XL-200, at the time taking the world record for the tallest and fastest roller coaster, as well as being the first to pass 200 feet. Cedar Fair president Dick Kinzel had seen a news report showing Bandit at Yomiuri Land in Japan. This roller coaster had no inversions, but instead emphasised height and speed. Taking Bandit as inspiration, the park looked for a manufacturer that could build a tall roller coaster without over-the-shoulder restraints. Arrow Dynamics was selected, with Arrow and designer Ron Toomer proposing a 187-foot ride to beat the then record for the longest drop. The 200-foot mark seemed so close that management pushed for that height, partly because of the increased publicity the ride would get. The term hypercoaster was coined for the ride and would become used for any roller coaster that broke the 200-foot barrier. The resulting design emulated that of a traditional out-and-back wooden roller coaster. Construction began in summer 1988, and the attraction was ready to welcome the first riders on May 6 the following year. Riders board one of the 3 trains, secured by lap bar restraints, and are dispatched towards the massive lift hill. Climbing skyward, passengers receive a view of Cedar Point and Lake Erie as they approach the peak of the ride. The train then races down the 60-degree drop, reaching speeds of 72 miles per hour. 2 camelback hills and a tunnel follow, before riders enter the pretzel-shaped turnaround. Riders then traverse 2 more tunnels and a series of airtime hills before the brakes. Magnum XL-200 received near universal praise, becoming known worldwide. The attraction constantly topped roller coaster polls and still ranks highly. Its legacy at the park is clear, pushing Cedar Point to install bigger and more complex steel rides over the coming years. Magnum XL-200 is also credited with starting a period known as the roller coaster wars. Parks around the world rushing to install bigger rides, and record holders changing annually. While Magnum would lose its title in 1994, Cedar Point would join the wars, breaking the 300 and 400 foot barrier and regaining the world record with future attractions. Iron Wolf opened at Six Flags Great America on April 28, 1990. This stand-up ride was situated in the county fair section of the park and became the first ever roller coaster to be manufactured by Bollinger & Mabillard. Originally employed by manufacturer Giovanola, Walter Bollinger and Claude Mabillard worked on many of the company's projects in the 1980s. These projects included Shockwave at Magic Mountain and Z-Force at Great America, utilising their box section track design. The pair left Giovanola in 1987 to form their own company, initially agreeing not to make any more amusement rides. Robert Mamp, an engineer at Six Flags Great America, had worked with the two men on Z-Force and contacted the pair to reconfigure the cars for their bobsled coaster. Following this successful project, Mamp convinced Bollinger and Mabillard to design a new stand-up roller coaster for the park. The pair accepted, and the attraction would become Iron Wolf, the company's first roller coaster. The ride that opened in 1990 would be the tallest and fastest stand-up roller coaster in the world, and would feature B&M's now iconic box section track. The track and the supports of the new coaster were coloured a deep red, the trains featuring a wolf motif on the lead car. Guests would enter the stand-up trains that were 4 across, for a total of 28 per train. Riders secured with over-the-shoulder restraints on height-adjustable saddles. Out of the station, trains make a curve and enter the lift hill, raising riders to a height of 100 feet. At the top, trains enter a curved drop to the left before pulling up into a vertical loop. A bank turn is followed by a helix, which lines trains up with the Corkscrew, the second of the ride's inversions. Following the Corkscrew, more bank turns and a helix deliver riders to the brakes. Iron Wolf would close in 2011 and be transferred to sister park Six Flags America, opening there the next year as Apocalypse. Apocalypse would go on to replace its trains with sit-down floorless models for the 2019 season. The site at Great America was eventually filled with RMC roller coaster Goliath. The success of Iron Wolf led to Six Flags Great America working with B&M again on their next project. 2 years later, they would open Batman the Ride at the Chicago park, shocking the theme park industry and premiering the inverted coaster. The success of Batman led to numerous clones, ensuring Bollinger and Mabillard's prominence in the sector. The company would go on to develop numerous new roller coaster concepts seen at parks around the world. Opening in 1995 as part of Phase 2 of Disneyland Paris, Space Mountain became the first full-circuit roller coaster to feature a launch. Contained inside a massive building and featuring an extensive space theme, the ride launched riders to 44 miles per hour and featured 3 inversions. Space Mountain had always been planned for Disneyland Paris, which opened in 1992. Scheduled to be constructed a few years later to provide renewed interest, Discovery Mountain, as it was known then, was initially intended to be an elaborate indoor space, featuring multiple attractions. As well as a roller coaster, plans included a free-fall drop, dark ride, restaurant, and even a stop for the Euro Disneyland Railroad. Following a lacklustre opening and financial problems, the project was downsized. A standalone roller coaster would be constructed, but one that still improved on previous versions. The new concept took inspiration from the classic Jules Verne novel, From the Earth to the Moon. The theming of the attraction matched that of Discoveryland, which showed a future envisaged by those in the past. In order to emulate the canon from the original book, a launch system was designed that would propel riders up the side of the mountain and into space. The system used a winch and catch car to accelerate trains up the slope reaching 1.3 G. Space Mountain de la Terre à la Lune opened on June 1, 1995. Approaching the attraction, guests would see the gold and green structure and on the side a massive cannon. Every so often, the cannon sprang to life, shooting riders skyward, accompanied by a blast of smoke. Entering the building, guests would eventually be delivered to a Victorian-style dual loading platform and board one of the trains, secured with over-the-shoulder restraints. Dispatch trains entered a small dip before engaging with the cannon. After a short pause, trains were launched up the cannon, slowing at the top and entering outer space. Racing around the dark interior, riders saw asteroids, machinery, and a smiling moon during a mid-course lift hill. The darkness of the interior hid 3 inversions, with riders not knowing which way was up. Trains featured onboard audio, another first in the industry. Riders would hear a custom soundtrack synchronised to the layout of the ride. Space Mountain provided a much-needed thrill element to the new park, the attraction having the desired effect on attendance, with fiscal year 1995 seeing a 21% increase. Space Mountain received a Mission 2 refresh in 2005 and has more recently become Hyperspace Mountain, receiving new trains and a Star Wars theme. Until its opening, launches had only been featured on smaller shuttle coasters. Space Mountain expanded the concept to a full-circuit ride. The next year, Premier Rides debuted the Outer Limits Flight of Fear. Opening at Kings Island and Kings Dominion in 1996, these attractions used new coaster technology, linear induction motors for their launch, paving the way for more complex rides and launch types in coming years. The world's first flying roller coaster opened at the most unlikely of locations in 1997. Advertised as a solo coaster, Skytrak premiered at Granada Studios Tour, a film and television themed attraction located in Manchester, England. Opening in 1988, Granada Studios Tour was a theme park emulating similar studio attractions. It featured a New York street, multiple shows showing the filmmaking process, and a bus tour. The highlight of the attraction was the Coronation Street set, allowing visitors to walk along the cobbles from the famous soap opera. The tour regularly expanded, featuring newer technology and brands. For 1997, the park decided to install something completely different. Skytrak will be installed in and around the outdoor New York Street sets, its single rail hung from numerous supports placed around the area. The name will be borrowed from a game on television programme Gladiators, tying in with one of the brands from the studio. Would-be riders were in for a long wait. The complicated loading procedure and single-person cars meant that Skytrak had a meagre 200 person per hour throughput. The layout of the ride featured swooping curves and drops, allowing the ride cars to swing as they negotiated the circuit. Boarding one of the 5 ride pods, guests would experience 1,282 feet of track, travelling at speeds of 28 miles per hour. The ride was heavily advertised in opening year, with the park stating it's the only ride where you're on your own, flying like Superman. As the millennium approached, visitor numbers at the studio attraction began to drop. Parent company Granada were also in financial difficulty, following the failure of its digital television brand. To save costs, Skytrak was closed in 1998, with the full attraction closing the following year. Nothing remains of the roller coaster, with the area redeveloped over the years. Skytrak paved the way for future flying roller coasters, with other manufacturers improving on the capacity and loading procedures. X opened at Six Flags Magic Mountain in January of 2002. Originally scheduled to open the prior year, with 2 other roller coasters, the ride made its debut as the first ever 4th dimension roller coaster. An extra set of rails allowed for controlled spinning of the seats as trains traversed the track. While working with manufacturer Aerodynamics, engineer Alan Schilke developed the design for the 4th dimension roller coaster. With traditional rides featuring 2 rails, the 4th dimension roller coaster would feature 4. The additional rails, named X-rails, were used to control spinning on the seats of the roller coaster trains. This would be accomplished with the use of a rack and pinion gear mechanism. X was planned as one of 3 rides for the 2001 season at Six Flags Magic Mountain, increasing its coaster count to 15 and taking the record from Cedar Point. Design flaws and construction delays meant the attraction would not open until the following year. However, when it did, it was groundbreaking. Trains could flip riders over on demand, without the usual twists in the track, leading to a wild and out-of-control ride experience. Featuring secure over-the-shoulder restraints, trains straddle the track, guests boarding from one of 2 sides seated in pairs. Ascending the lift hill, riders face outwards to a view of the park. Once at the top, trains dip downwards, with riders gazing skyward, before seats flip and guests enter the main drop staring at the ground. Trains then enter a Raven turn, with seats twisting in a lie-to-fly manoeuvre. Trains exit, riders completing a backflip before they enter a fan turn for a fly-to-lie manoeuvre. Riders then enter a second Raven turn before a half twist in the brakes. While praised by enthusiasts, X is often deemed too intense for some riders. It has also suffered from significant amounts of downtime due to the prototype nature of the attraction. In 2008, the ride opened as X2 with an updated colour scheme and new trains from manufacturer S&S. X would be the last ride from Aerodynamics. After more than 50 years in the industry, it would file for bankruptcy in December 2001. Increased competition from newer companies such as B&M had hurt Aero's core business, and X was an attempt to design a new ride type to compete. Cost overruns, miscalculations, and Six Flags asking for a larger ride than the prototype contributed to Aero's downfall. S&S would purchase the company's assets, going on to construct two fourth-dimension roller coasters of its own. The world's first 10-looping roller coaster opened at Thorpe Park, England in March 2002, taking the record from Spanish ride Dragon Khan and ushering in a new era at the theme park. Until the opening of Colossus, Thorpe Park had been a family-focused theme park. Initially offering heritage attractions, it had gradually evolved and had installed two less-than-thrilling roller coasters. Recently acquiring the property, new owners to Swords were looking to attract a thrill-seeking audience, and a big new attraction was needed to do that. This was the peak of the roller coaster wars, with parks clamouring to outdo one another and snatch world records year after year. A record that seemed to have some longevity was the one for most inversions. B&M's Dragon Khan had opened at Port Aventura in 1995, featuring a layout that turned riders upside down 8 times. Manufacturer Intamin had matched that number, but nobody had gone further. Thorpe Park would use Intamin's basic design and replace the final helix with 2 heartline rolls, taking the record for inversions and enjoying the subsequent publicity it would bring. Colossus expanded the park's new Lost City area, with the coaster seemingly constructed around the ruins of a lost civilization. Once seated in trains, overhead restraints were lowered and the riders dispatched, immediately beginning the ascent up the 98-foot lift hill. Entering a curve and drop, trains lined up with a vertical loop, the first of the 10 inversions. Exiting the loop, an airtime hill lifts riders before pulling them down under a shop. Trains then race through a cobra roll. Following this, 2 corkscrews are traversed before a turnaround as trains line up for the grand finale, stretching the full length of the ride, a series of 4 back-to-back heartline rolls. Slowly, riders somersault over and over in dizzying repetition. A 180-degree turnaround provides a brief respite, before one final heartline roll and the brakes. Colossus put Thorpe Park on the map with thrill seekers, and subsequent installations cemented its reputation within the market. The inversion record was a good choice for the park, and was only matched by other attractions, allowing Thorpe Park to market Colossus as the first. It would finally be broken 15 years later, with the opening of the Smiler at Alton Towers. Becoming the first ride to use the now iconic I-Box track from Rocky Mountain Construction, New Texas Giant opened at Six Flags Over Texas in April of 2011. The roller coaster was a renovation of the former Texas Giant that had opened in 1990. Texas Giant was designed by Curtis D. Summers and built by the Dinn Corporation. It would open as the world's tallest wooden roller coaster, standing 143 feet high. While initially a success, the coaster became rough in its later years. To rectify this, large amounts of maintenance was needed, including 1,200 feet of track work being performed in the 2008-2009 closed season. Although offering slight improvements, a long-term solution was needed. Fred Grubb and Sue Ann Dedman founded Rocky Mountain Construction in 2001, with the company working on multiple projects, including some in the theme park industry. In 2009, Alan Schilke began working with Fred Grubb, beginning development on the I-Box track. This track, designed to be retrofitted to wooden roller coasters, reducing maintenance and creating a smoother ride experience. A renovation costing $10 million was announced for Texas Giant. The roller coaster would close in 2009, with work beginning almost immediately. RMC and Six Flags revealed the partnership March the following year, unveiling the iBox track that had been 3 years in development. The installation of the new track saw much of the ride reprofiled, with a modified layout designed by Alan Schilke. The first drop was made steeper, and the banking on turns increased. After being seated in Gerstlauer-designed trains, riders leave the station, round a curve, and begin ascending the now 153-foot-tall lift hill. At the top, trains hurtle downwards at an angle of 79 degrees, before a double-up leads to a series of overbank curves and small airtime hills. Following a mid-course brake run, trains complete a series of low-to-the-ground airtime hills and encounter a number of tunnels. New Texas Giant and its use of RMC's iBox track was a clear success, taking an aging wooden beast and transforming it to become a hybrid ride. The renovation removed much of the maintenance required for the old version, as well as improving the smoothness of the ride. The new Texas Giant constantly ranked highly in roller coaster polls, leading to worldwide recognition. The success saw Rocky Mountain Construction renovate more wooden roller coasters in subsequent years, as well as designing and constructing ground-up rides. The company was catapulted from obscurity, RMC coasters becoming the new must-have ride at theme parks around the world. Building on the success of the past, the roller coaster industry continues to innovate. From revolutionary track to new attraction concepts, these innovations shape the rides of the future, allowing designers to create coasters that surprise and delight theme park visitors.